are these people?
So you might have heard some bills that are being proposed in terms of, silencing critics who are anti-Israel. So we're going to go into that in this segment. So shout out to Robert Inlakesh from Consortium, for reporting on this. This was an article that I had in the back burner since last week, which I found then. Figure we might as well talk about it now. And again, this is more of a warning for the rest of us, especially what might be happening come New Year. So be careful. I'm just saying that just as a concerned Care Bear. So Robert reports on how U.S. Congress plans to target critics of Israel. Guess that includes us as well. A coalition of civil rights groups is sounding the alarm over 3 proposed bills that, they argue, represent an audacious attempt to stifle dissent and curb free expression in the United States. The legislation, H.R. 6408, H.R. 9495, and S. 4136, claims to combat terrorism by targeting the tax-exempt status of nonprofits deemed to be in violation. But critics insist the true aim is more insidious, to suppress organizations that are critical of Israel. Championed by lawmakers with deep ties to AIPAC, the bills, if passed, could pave the way for an unprecedented crackdown on dissent under the guise of national security. While federal laws already prohibit supporting proscribed terrorist organizations, these bills would expand the government's reach over nonprofits under the appearance of countering such threats. H.R. 6408 and H.R. 9495 have already passed the House of Representatives, with S. 4136 poised to add further amendments to the legislative effort. Critics have dubbed H.R. 9495 the nonprofit killer bill, and it's drawing sharp condemnation from groups like the ACLU, and the Council of American Islamic Relations, or CARE. In a letter signed by over 300 nonprofits, the ACLU called on Congress to reject the legislation, warning of its potential to erode constitutional rights and empower government overreach. CARE echoes these concerns in a press release, labeling the bills undemocratic and accusing them of undermining fundamental freedoms. With growing opposition, the fate of these controversial bills may hinge on the ability of civil rights advocates to mobilize the public and legislative resistance. Critics argued that the legislative push embodied by H.R. 9495 and H.R. 6408 hand unprecedented authority to the U.S. Treasury Secretary, enabling them to unilaterally revoke the tax-exempt status of nonprofit organizations accused of, quote-unquote, supporting terrorism.
And that's direct attack on, like, a lot of the journalism independent, for sure. Because they're all, 501c3s, nonprofits, just to try to keep the lights on.
So this would include, I guess, like Consortium News, Gray Zone, like all the media that we most of the media that we read and feature would be, screwed under this. So, so this is why you support independent media, y'all. So, CARE warns that this could be done using classified evidence without formal charges or sufficient opportunity for organizations to defend themselves.
So without due process, pretty much.
Without due process, yeah.
Yeah.
Despite this criticism, both bills have cleared Congress, which H.R. 6408, billed by its supporters as a response to the October 7th Hamas-led attack on Israel, received less attention, but facing similar backlash. The Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee contends the legislation creates virtually no limitations or accountability on the Treasury Secretary's discretion, allowing decisions based on viewpoints that differ on those of the administration in power. Jonathan Schwenzer, Vice President of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, a neoconservative Washington-based think tank, has claimed that pro-Palestinian student protesters take guidance and support from American nonprofit organizations.
Right. God forbid.
Schnatzer claims that one such charity, American Muslims in Palestine, carries a striking resemblance to Hamas charities that were dismantled here more than a decade ago. Schwanzer was likely referring to the Holy Land Foundation, who were subjected to a highly politicized trial that led to their designation as a terrorist organization in the post-9/11 era. Republican Congressman David Kushoff, the sponsor of H.R. 6408, has received nearly $230,000 from pro-Israel lobby groups. A vocal advocate for
the above board money.
Right. So, a vocal advocate for legislating away anti-Semitism, Kushoff's initiatives have drawn condemnation from sides in criticism of Israel on college campuses. After the bill's passage, Kushoff claims recent reports indicate here are U.S.-based nonprofits suspected of providing support and funding to terrorist groups.
I find it funny that this is all like Republican senators too, who would normally be like, if this was any other minority group trying to get protections in any way, they'd be like, nah, fuck you.
Like, fuck off.
Right. You know, so but you're just trying to divide us. So, okay. You know.
Senators John Cornyn and Angus King, beneficiaries of significant donations from pro-Israel donors, case in point, introduced S4136, a bill that proposes suspending the tax-exempt status of organizations accused of terrorism support. Cohen has received at least $488,888. That's a random number, but from pro-Israel donors. And Senator Angus King's top donor from 2019 to 2024 was, of course, our friends AIPAC.
I do find it weird that these are like really specific numbers too. Like this one from Claudia Tenney, who has received over 178,000. Like, how does that? I mean, at least that's some zeros, you know,
right,
on it. But like, how do we get like 88, 88, 88? Like, how does that work? That's fucking weird.
If the U.S. Treasury Department chooses to follow the advice of AIPAC, it could usher in an era of unprecedented scrutiny for any charity critical of Israel. Historically, targeting such organizations, along with universities, rights groups, and media outlets, requiring the cumbersome step of designating them as terrorist entities. The proposed legislation, however, threatens to streamline this process, turning what was once a legal labyrinth, a process of checks and balances, ensuring that American civil rights were protected, into a fast track of silencing dissent. This shift dovetails with President-elect Donald Trump's fiery rhetoric about cracking down on university campuses that allows protests against Israel to occur. The bills, crafted primarily by Republican lawmakers, seem designed to dovetail with Trump's ideological crusade, poised to gain traction under his return to the presidency. Trump's promises to take aim at institutions deemed insufficiently supportive of Israel loom large over this legislative push.
And I thought we were the party of like, you know, keeping college free.
Mind, this is right, but keep in mind, I know that Robert will probably say this.
Yes.
But this has been happening already.
Yes.
Under Democrats.
Yep.
So don't mistake. Yes, Republicans are notorious for doing this anyway, but we know this. This has been happening regardless under Biden. So,
and these are also the same people who would be like the universities are teaching our kids and controlling what they think. Like, yes, and like y'all just want. That's the thing. It's like they just don't want it control. Like they want their thoughts being forced on kids. That's the only difference. Right. So,
central to these concerns is Trump's nominee for Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, a hedge fund manager with a storied and at times controversial career. As George Soros' former top investor, Dissent made waves in 2014 when he reportedly threatened to resign over the Open Society Foundation's proposal to divest from companies tied to Israel. According to the Wall Street Journal, Dissent's ultimatum effectively squashed the idea. The fears surrounding this legislative shift are not entirely speculative. Recent government actions, such as the designation of the Sandouin, the Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network, as a terrorist organization, have already showcased the state's willingness to stretch the bounds of such classifications. With these new bills poised to pass, critics worry that the target list will grow to encompass not just pro-Palestinian nonprofits, but also any group that dares to criticize Israel. For many, the specter of an all-encompassing crackdown looms, threatening the very foundations of free expression and dissent.
Mm-hmm.
So next year is going to be very interesting for us in independent media.
Yep.
So,
which it's already been pretty interesting, but you know, so
well,
just,
it'll be interesting to see how Democrat and no, it's just going to be rhetoric, but see what they're going to say,
right,
in terms of like, because most Democrats would be for it. So, and I believe, and I have to double check, I believe AOC voted for one of these bills, actually.
It's going to be hard to be an opposition candidate when you're not one.
Right.
Huh?
Right. So she can talk all she wants about free speech. And I also believe Jamal Bowman as well also voted for one of these bills. So he was finding hot air in terms of, like, oh, being pro-Palestine and all that bullshit. But in the same breath, you also vote. Like, this just kind of shows me that a lot of these politicians do not read these fucking bills.
No.
And in a way, given how many of these bills are like pages long, there's absolutely no way that many of these people are going to read through it and know the ins and outs of any of them, especially if they're like tied to other shit.
They're also purposefully vague. If you're going to throw 1,000 pages, you might as well at least make it like comprehensive and like,
right.
Nail down exactly what you're wanting, not just open-ended to be interpreted either. That's the craziness to me. So, which I saw. Yeah. What's worse is that to fix that, solutions have been put out to make AI summaries of the bills, and that's what they read. How about just make bills that aren't 1,000 pages?
1,000 pages long.
Right. Like, make them concise and understanding.
Single issue bills. Single issue bills.
Like, no writers, none of that shit. You can't call the fucking, Free Bananas for Everyone Act and, it's talking about fucking like beef jerky. You can't do that. So they do that shit all the time. I hate it. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, we'll obviously, like, given we dissent against Israel all the time, we will see. I think we will see how this plays out come next year in terms of, our network, and then also, as we said, other independent media sources. And I'm sure, and I'm guessing more than likely, there's going to be a push for like all of these. And actually, that might be something we need to consider. Like
they'll probably go after Indie Media Award honorees first, like Robert Inlakesh.
Right. But I'm just thinking off the top of my head. Like we read a lot of their work here, and obviously a lot of the work this show especially is meant like how do we miss that is a way to kind of highlight the work that of other people, lesser known journalists who may not otherwise get the recognition that they deserve.